So this idea was created that you had to hold leaders who carry out genocidal actions accountable for what they did. And in some cases we have, in some cases we haven't. I also posted a video on the very awful civil war between Tamil people and Sinhalese in Sri Lanka, formerly known as Ceylon. And because the Sri Lankan government, which is accused by some of having committed genocidal acts, bombarding civilian hospitals, among others, are in power, they deny that any of that occurred, and they are not being prosecuted. They're in power. You may ask, where do these countries get all that weaponry? Well, they either get it given to them by countries like China, Soviet Union, or in some cases the United States, though in Sri Lanka it was China. And I would say that's the one thing that poor countries don't lack, is weapons. Sort of like the United States. And in some cases very sophisticated weapons. We see that in Ukraine, where the missile that shot down that Malaysian airliner, hell of a way to die. Well, it's quick. And so, you know, when governments are in power, it's hard for the UN or anybody else to take action. There is the International Criminal Court, but like the League of Nations, we haven't joined it because we oppose certain elements, and conservatives announce it as an infringement on our sovereignty, which it probably is. But given on what sovereignty, that is the Commission on Genocidal Acts, what's wrong with that? But the U.S. is not part of the International Criminal Court. We have pushed for war crime trials in places like Cambodia. But then, as the video on our bombing at Cambodia shows, there are some, including fairly high-level American officials, Brent Scowcroft, for example, who raised the question whether we, the United States, had committed genocidal actions. Kissinger and others deny it, and I can guarantee you nothing's going to be done to them, nor to George W. Bush, who, in my humble view, along with Cheney and that other members of that crowd, they should all be prosecuted for war crimes. Iraq didn't do anything else. You know, Afghanistan's a different story. Afghanistan was a platform for the September 11 attacks. Nobody questions our right to go in there and take care of it, although I wish we had taken care of only the Al-Qaeda and not taken on all the Taliban, which is why it's now the longest war in history. But Iraq was just a sideshow. I mean, we had all these notions of what Iraq had done, which were all lies. I knew, having been in military intelligence, that they did not have any weapons of mass destruction. Sanctions really do work. That guy couldn't buy anything. He couldn't even buy chlorine to clean up his water, because chlorine can be used in chemical weapons. And they had no industry in that country, except oil production. And yet all these claims were made, and American people bought that, cheered them on, along with the press, newsmen, who didn't ask tough questions. And that's from the New York Times down. And we got involved in this mess, which we're still involved in, with an unstable government there. You know, say what you want about Saddam Hussein. I have no doubt that it was a maniac. But bombs weren't going off in Baghdad. He had managed to bring the Shiites and the Sunnis together, although it was a shotgun marriage. But that was not happening in Iraq. And Iraq was never a threat to us. None of these countries are threats to us. Iran's not a threat to us. North Korea's not. We only got 15,000 nuclear weapons, and they're a threat to us? Please. How many of them have submarines, nuclear submarines armed with Poseidon missiles? Maybe I'll post something on that. The nonsense that people can believe. But anyway, that's not going to happen. No American, I would argue, political leaders are ever going to be prosecuted on these terms. Even General LeMay, who headed our bombing campaign of Japan in World War II, said if we had lost, he would have been put on trial for war crimes because of the massive killing of civilians. Though I don't believe that. You know, they attacked us. And when you start a war, don't start complaining about people being killed. The Japanese citizenry was not innocent. They were not innocent civilians because they tolerated their country and their government in carrying out aggression and acts like the Nanking Massacre. So I don't want to hear about the poor innocent Japanese. When you start wars, this is what happens. And just to make it clear, I have no reservations about dropping the gadget on Hiroshima. Yes, it probably helped in the war more quickly. But to me, this is what happens when you start a war. I only regret we didn't get to drop it on Berlin. Well, let's not go too far. So that's the whole issue. And so some people, but not all, have been prosecuted in Cambodia. Milosevic was in Yugoslavia, though he died before he was in prison. No one has in Sri Lanka. No one has in Sudan, although International Criminal Court would like to try the Sudanese leader for what was done in Darfur. But that's not likely to happen. You got a member of the Security Council of China declaring that Darfur was not genocide, it was a civil war. Well, hell of a civil war. And despite all the lies and prevarications of the run-up to the invasion of Iraq, our leaders are never going to be held accountable. Indeed, most Americans still believe there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Ever seen them? Well, you're not going to, because they didn't exist. I bet an Adelphi student $50 that they didn't exist. They never paid me. So, that's the way it is, folks. Better than before. Remember, after World War I, Germany as a whole was punished. The Kaiser Wilhelm was not personally punished, nor was the German high staff. But after World War II, we went after individuals. But it's very much a mixed bag. And it really depends on how powerful you are. We, the Soviets, the Russians, Chinese are powerful enough that we're never going to be taken to trial, our leaders. And even countries like Sri Lanka, which is very small, with their leaders in control, they're not going to be taken. They're not going to be put on trial unless somebody else comes into power. Well, don't hold your breath on that. And in Cambodia, it's a mixed bag. All right. I'll post these two. And the Islam-Asian combined summary. God, am I a softie. I can't look myself in the mirror. Are due next Wednesday. Try to get them done, folks. Book review coming.